Hello class! This lesson introduces the next element of art, which is shape. Everything in the world around us has a shape, and artists use many shapes in their artwork. So as we can see, shape is the second element of art that we will learn about. We've already covered line for the past few weeks, and now we're going to move on to shape. The learning standard for 4th grade is use the structural elements of art and organizational principles of design to understand the art making process. Our learning goal is I can use the structural elements of art and organizational principles of design to understand the art making process. Our check for understanding is to create an ocean scene using different shapes. And the embedded standard within this standard is to integrate ideas during the art making process to convey meaning in personal works of art. And use accurate art vocabulary to discuss the creative process. Our 5th grade standard for this week is to use the structural elements of art and organizational principles of design to develop content in artwork. Our learning goal is I can use structural elements of art and organizational principles of design to develop content in artwork. Our check for understanding is to create an ocean scene using different shapes, and the embedded standards within this standard is to develop a range of interests in the art making process to influence personal decision making, and to use accurate art vocabulary to discuss works of art and the creative process. So we are using these standards by learning the elements of art. We've already covered line, and now we're moving on to shape, and in the incoming weeks we'll be learning more about the other elements of art, and we'll be discussing our artworks and our processes through art vocabulary. Okay, so our objectives for this lesson is art history and culture, to recognize that some artists create artwork with animals as the subject, creative expression, to create an ocean scene using art materials of your choice, aesthetic perception, to understand that the shape of an object is formed by the line that surrounds it, and art criticism, to evaluate one's own artwork using the 4 steps of art criticism. So as some practice, I want you to grab a sheet of paper and whatever you can use to draw your favorite shape. So I'm going to give you a little bit of time to go ahead and do that, to get you to start thinking about some shapes. Okay, some vocabulary for this lesson is shape, also known as forma in Spanish. Shape is a figure or area that is defined in some way. So if we take a look here, we know that we're familiar with all these shapes here. Some maybe not so familiar, but we can recognize most of these. And our other vocabulary is outline, or in Spanish, contorno, a line that shows or creates the outer edges of a shape. So the outline of this dinosaur here is shown by this picture. So it's just a single line that traces around its shape. Okay, so a shape is created by the line all around it. Artists use shapes in their works of art, and this artwork has many shapes. What shapes can you find in the artwork? So I'll give you a minute to think about what kind of different shapes you notice in this artwork. Now, what kinds of lines make each shape? Remember, we've learned about horizontal, vertical, diagonal, zigzag, wavy, curvy. We've learned a lot of lines so far. So what kind of different lines do you notice in these shapes? I'll give you a minute to think about that as well. Now, take a look all around you. What are some of the shapes that you see around you in your house or wherever you are watching this lesson? Okay, lines, outline, shapes. So when you see an animal, how do you know what animal it is? Give yourself a moment to think about that. So we can recognize and identify animals as well as other living and non-living things because of their shapes. So everything around us has its own unique shape. So this llama here has its own shape. These whales here have their own shape. This frog here has its own shape. This eagle bird has its own shape. So we know what things are because of their shape. Now let's take a look at the artwork on this slide. So the artists use lines to make these animal shapes. Take a minute to study both works of art to find shapes. What kind of lines make the shapes? Okay, so if we take a look at this fish, it's outlined by a bunch of dots that are curved and yellow. There's circles in the fish, and there's also some triangles in the fish, so there's many different shapes going on in the fish. Now in this metal sculpture of this horse, the lines create the outline of the horse to make its shape. So we see many different lines. We see curved lines, we see diagonal lines, we see straight lines, vertical lines, horizontal lines. There are many different lines that created this horse. Using lines to outline shapes. So shapes are made when lines come together. A line around the edge of a shape is its outline. So if we look at an apple, this would be the outline of an apple. And if we look at a key, this would be the outline of a key. So it's made to define its shape. Now what I want you to do is practice drawing different shapes. Here's some examples of different shapes on this image here, so you can practice your rectangle, your spiral line shapes, your circles, and your triangles. When you are finished with that, I want you to brainstorm and start sketching ideas for an ocean scene. So a question to think about is, what shapes would you put in an ocean scene? So use crayons or anything that you have at home to draw outlines of fish shapes and plant shapes. Use big shapes, medium-sized shapes, and small shapes. And you can use paint to color in some parts of your page. So like your water, it'll cover all the big areas of your artwork. Okay, and some art criticism questions to think about when you are creating your ocean scene project is describe. What plants and animals did you include in your ocean scene? Analyze. How many different shapes did you create? Interpret. Is your ocean a friendly place or a scary place? How can you tell? Decide. Did you use lines to outline shapes? So you will be answering these questions as part of your assignment, and you will also be uploading a picture of your assignment. When you are done, you will click on your grade level team. So I'm going to use 3rd grade as an example. And again, just like we've been doing, you will click on assignments. Then you will click on Ocean Scene Project. Then you will see a page that looks like this, and you will answer your questions, and then you will insert your picture just like how we've been doing. So again, I can show you guys. You will click below here after you answer your questions, click insert, picture, camera, and then your little camera will pop up. See, I'm right here. You will click your picture and it'll be right here. Then you will click close and then turn in. So if you have any questions, please let me know.